Okay, everyone, so we're in the final steps of our first composite video. And in this video, we will cover how to add all the text you're seeing on the screen there, the glowing eyes on the snake, the gun flare, the glowing Cobra logo, the flare in behind the characters, as well as the logo and the glow around the logo as well. I hope you guys find this video useful and that you've had a fun time with this series, and I hope you enjoy your edits. Okay, so I just want to start the video by explaining where I do find my fonts, my layer styles, brushes, etc. to do all the effects and the different glows and everything. They all come from these three sites for the most part. Envato.com. As for the layer styles, basically everything that has to do with the glows and the different effects. A lot of my brushes have also come from there. Now this is a site where you can buy the different things that are available, and there are some free options as well. Brusheezy.com is another website where you can find Photoshop brushes, and again, a lot of them are free, but you can buy some of the additional ones as well. And also defont.com is where I tend to find a lot of the different fonts that I use in order to have different text effects and different looks on the text and all the different edits as well. Those are probably the three most common places I tend to find the different items and tools that I use throughout these edits. So the first thing we want to do is we want to open the previous document that we were working on in the previous video tutorial on masking, and we want to load that file into Photoshop. So you're going to want to go up to File, Open, and then you're going to navigate to the folder that you have your file into, where you saved it last, and basically just select the file and then hit OK. So in this case, I've already opened it. So basically, you're just going to select your PSD file and then hit open. And it will open the file and then populate the window here that you see. So right now, I just loaded the masked figures that we actually did in the last tutorial and our background, of course. Okay. From there, the first thing we want to do is we want to create our text for our image and position it where we would like it to be. So you would basically just click on your text icon or the T here on the toolbar. You would then select whatever font it is you'd like to use by using your drop-down menu and selecting it from your list of fonts. You then select whether or not you want it to be regular, italic, which is basically kind of on a slight angle, or bold, which is just basically the letters a lot thicker. In this case, I want regular. This is going to be your font size, so how big your actual text is in points, and you just would select what size you'd like it to be from there. This can also be scaled after the fact or changed after the fact just by basically going back in here or hitting the Command T feature, which will give you a transform option, and you can just enlarge the text by dragging and dropping. This option here allows you to use either kind of a smooth edge, a sharp edge, a crisp edge, that sort of idea to make your text as sharp or as soft as possible. And then from here you have your justification. So whether or not when you start typing, it starts typing from the left side, starting from the center to make sure your text stays centered, or clicking on the right and starting your text off from the right side in case you want to align everything off to the right. When you choose the left, obviously it'll start by typing from the left side on all your different lines of text. When you go center, it's going to basically make sure they all stay justified in the center column and basically make sure that all your text is basically going to stay centered, one underneath the other. From there, you have your color options. So in this case here, I want to pick white. So you just click on that little box. This will bring up your color picker. You're going to basically choose what color you'd like it to be. And then you'd also just choose from the bar here. In this case, I want white. So I'm just basically going to pick the top left corner of that box to get back to white. And I'm going to select OK. And then now I have white as my color. From there, we're going to want to click into the workspace and basically just start to type. So we click, and then basically it'll actually bring up our little marker to allow us to start typing. In this case, I've already got my first line ready, so we're just going to kind of bring that back by hitting the eyeball key. When I start wanting to type, I can basically just click wherever this is. Now you'll notice when I go above, I get that little box around it to let me know where I'm going to be positioning my text or starting my text. In this case, with the line already typed, I'm just going to highlight next to the first letter in the line, and that's going to bring us back into the line that I've already been working on. From here, we would just start typing and typing in whatever it is that we want. In this case, I want adding effects and glows in Photoshop, so I would just start basically typing that out. Once you get what you want typed out, you can just basically hit the move tool here in the top left corner, and that will deselect it. And in this case, I want to add a second layer of text underneath in a different color. So what I want to do is I want to basically click on my layer here from the layers menu, and I want to click and drag to the new layer icon, which is that little plus symbol, and then let go. And it'll create a duplicate layer or a copy of that layer. To change it, what I want to do is I want to basically go into my text tool again, and I want to basically go back to where it was, where the letter started, and I want to click and hold, and I want to highlight the entire line of text that I want to change. And then that will actually highlight all of the text. I'm going to go back up to that color picker box here in the corner, and I'm going to select the color that I'd like it to be from there. In this case, I want red, so I'm just going to click the top left corner to give me my red, and then I'm going to select OK. Now you'll notice when I deselect it, it's actually sitting on top and you can no longer see the white, but I want the white as a foreground color. So what I want to do then is I want to go back to my layers menu and I want to click and hold on that one and drag it just beneath. And now my white is on top, but now I can't see my red. So in order to see the red, I'm going to want to make sure that I have the move tool selected. And then I'm just going to basically use my keyboard and I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to use my up, down, left, and right arrow keys to reposition that text. So you'll notice as I start basically using the arrows, it's going to start moving that text into the position I'd like it to be. Now in this case here, it moved it too far, so I'm just going to kind of fiddle with it until I get it lined up where I want it, which is about there. And then I'm going to let go of those keys to make sure that everything stays put. Now that we have everything typed out and we have it where we want it on the actual document, we're going to basically click both layers. We're going to select the top one, and then we're going to hold shift and select the second one at the same time. And then now we're going to hit Command T, and that's going to allow us to move and position the text wherever we would like it to be, or to enlarge it and make it larger or smaller. Once you have that selected, you're going to move your mouse or your trackpad. You're going to scroll over there to the edge of the box, and you're going to see that these little arrows appear that look almost like a U shape, and that gives you the option to kind of change its angle. So once you get those to appear, you're going to click and hold, and then you're just going to basically drag while you're holding, and that's going to allow you to put the text onto an angle. If you make a mistake and you want to correct it, you can always hit Command Z, and that's going to take you back to your starting position, and then you can start again. Or you can just keep fiddling with it as you see fit by holding until you let go again. You can click and hold again, just reposition it again as well. Once I've got it on the angle that I want it on, I can rescale it. To rescale it, normally you would be holding shift and then dragging to enlarge or make it smaller based on the earlier versions of Photoshop, so CS6 or before. If you're using Creative Cloud or CC, you're just going to basically click the corner and then drag out. So you want to pick the either the left or right corner, bottom, top, doesn't matter. And you're just going to click and hold and then let go once you've got it in the position you want it to be, and this is the size that you'd like it to be. In this case, I probably want it to be about there. Okay, and then to deselect, we're just going to basically either hit enter or return, or we can just click on the move tool, and that will actually allow us to deselect it, so now we're no longer moving it. Now you can group these together so that you actually have them grouped. To do so, you're just basically going to select the top layer, and then you're going to hold shift and hit click to select the second one, and then Command G on your keyboard, and that's going to group them together. And then you can actually name that folder. In this case, we're just going to call it text, and then we know our text is in that folder, so we know where it is when we want to reposition it. To open the folder, you just click the little arrow here on the side, and that opens up that particular folder and its contents. We're going to select it, and then we can basically hold shift and click on the second one, and then we can again start dragging and dropping it wherever we'd like it to be. And this just makes it easier when you actually have a large number of objects in your layers to keep track of where things are. So when we start creating glows and everything, I'm going to create a folder for the glows and for the different effects, and then I'm going to create one for the logo we're going to make as well. Okay, so in this case, we're done with text. We've got it where we want it to be, and now we're on to the next step. Next, we're on to our logo, and we're basically going to look at creating this particular logo here. You can design this to read as whatever you would like it to be based on what you'd like in your image. So in this case, we're calling it AFC after the Action Figure Captures channel. And to do so, what we need to do now is we need to create a new document. So for the document size, I chose to go File and then New, of course. This brings up our document setup window. And then basically what we're going to do is we're going to want to make sure that we type in our proportions here. In this case, I have it to be 6 inches wide by 4 inches tall. My orientation is, of course, landscape. If I go into portrait mode, it's going to flip those two and it's going to make it go horizontally as opposed to vertical. I want it to be vertical in this case. So I want 6 inches wide by 4 inches high. Resolution of 300 dpi so that we can scale this thing comfortably and not worry about it breaking up and looking pixelated. So you want to make sure that you select pixels per inch. And then basically we have our RGB color mode. So you just would pick that from your menus as you go. And then I have it as 16 bits so we can get a large color range. And this is important as well. You want to make sure you have it set as a transparent background because anything you're typing in and setting up and everything to create this logo, you want to make sure that there's no actual box in behind it or any kind of shape behind it that'll actually be part of that fixture unless you want it there. So you want to make sure you have a transparent background so that it doesn't create a background behind what you're working on in a solid color. So in this case, I can choose to use a solid color if I'd like, either white, black, or I can do a custom color, whatever I'd like it to be. I can pick up whatever color I'd like. In this case, I want no color, so I'm going to select transparent. And then I have my Adobe RGB workspace for my color profile. So you can select your color profile that you'd like to use here. RGB just gives us a large, or Adobe RGB gives us a large number of colors to choose from, and it gives us a broader scale of colors. And now we're just going to hit create. That creates our box, as you can see. So we have our basic workspace here. And that's where we're going to begin. So here now I have already prepped the logo in place, and what we have here is we have our folder containing our different layers. The layer here, the top one, is the first layer, which is the AFC in red. The second layer is the AFC in black. Our third layer, okay, is going to be the text that's actually sitting inside this rectangular shape that we'll create. And basically it's just sitting in there, and then we have to obviously scale it and proportion it to fit inside the rectangular box and put these on the right angle and everything, which I'm going to show you how to do in a moment. This is our first rectangle, which is a yellow with the black stroke around it. So you'll notice it has a little black edge. We want to make sure we have a stroke around that first box to make sure it sits on top and actually has a bit of a 3D-ish look to it. And then our bottom one here is our black rectangle that actually gives us that sort of 3D pop, much like the black does on the layers here for the text. So when we're typing in the layers here, what we want to do is you want to basically hit, you're going to go to text. So what we're going to start with here is we're going to have like no layers here, obviously, and we're just going to have basically our workspace. So what happens now is we are going to create a new layer. Okay, oh, sorry. We're going to hit the text key, sorry, forgive me. And then we're basically going to go into our workspace and we're going to type our first character, which is basically the A. Okay, and then we have our color selected, of course, from up here. And we can choose whatever color we'd like it to be just by selecting the color and then hitting OK. And you have to make sure the character is highlighted, of course. And then once the character is highlighted, sorry, forgive me, you basically are going to select the color that you'd like it to appear, and it will change the color based on whatever color you choose. In this case, I want it to be red, so we're just going to select red, and we're going to pick the top right corner to get the red as to the red that we want it to be. And then I have my first character selected. To make our second character, what we want to do is I'm going to make a duplicate of that same layer so we can make sure everything's in the same scale. So I'm going to click and drag the A down to the new layer option. And then to change it from an A to an F, I'm basically going to hit text. I'm going to take the text marker icon here, and I'm going to move it closer to the letter, which is going to allow me to highlight it. So you notice right now it has that little box around it. That's when you're typing into a new space to let you know where you're typing into. When I scroll down here and I basically get close to the letter, it changes to allow me to create the marker to highlight. And I'm just going to basically click and then drag over that A, which is our copy layer. And I'm going to now hit my next character, which is my F. And it's just going to put it directly on top because it's acting like I'm basically in the same spot. To move it, we're going to select the Move tool from up top. And then we're just going to use the arrow keys on our keyboard to kind of scroll it across. And we're going to just basically press and hold the arrow key to get that guy to move across. And then to speed this up a little bit, you can hold Shift, and then that will allow you to move in larger increments so that you can actually go across a little faster. I believe it's a 10-time increment when you're holding Shift. So now for our next character, we're going to take the F, we're going to drag and drop it underneath to the new layer again, and it's going to allow us to create that second F. We're going to click text, we're going to highlight that again, and we're just going to put our next letter, which is our C. We're going to click move again, hold shift, and just start pressing the arrow key on our keyboard to reposition the C to where we'd like it to be. Now you want to obviously make sure that your characters are justified properly, so you're just going to want to select each layer and make sure they're kind of lined up where you'd like them to be. And once you have them where you want them, you're all set to go. In this case here now, I want to duplicate each one of these again, but I want to change the color to black. So right now I'm just going to click and rearrange these guys back to the AFC position. So I'm going to click on the A, I'm going to drag it up top, and then now the character is now back on top. I'm going to click on the F, move that to the center, so now we have our AFC again. Now to duplicate these three, I'm going to click on the top A, and I'm basically going to either hold shift and click each individual layer, so the F and then the C, or if I have a whole bunch of characters that I want to do this with, I can click on the first one and I can go down to the bottom one or the last one that I want to do. I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to click, and you'll notice it'll highlight all the layers above it so that all the layers are selected. Once I have the layer selected that I want to copy, I'm going to click and hold and then drag them down to that new layer icon, and it's going to create copies of each one. And you'll notice now I have my AFC copies. Now to change the color on these, I'm going to click on each one individually, and I'm going to click on my text tool, and I'm going to highlight the first character, and I'm going to go back up top here, and I'm going to select my next color, which I want it to be black. So I'm going to select black, and I'm going to hit OK. And now my black character is on top. I want that below it, so I'm going to show you how to reposition that in just a moment. We're going to select our F to get our F, our second F in black. So we're going to click text again. We're going to go up to the color here again, and we're going to basically select black. And now we've got our black character. We're going to go to C here again, and we're going to select the text key again, click up top, click our next color, and then hit OK. So now we've got our AFC in black. Now to reposition these, I'm going to select my move tool, and I'm basically going to click and highlight those three layers again. Okay. Once I have them all selected, I want to drop them just below the ones that we had on top previously. So I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to drag them until I get right underneath that second C. Okay, and once they're below the second C, I'm just going to release them. And then now they're right behind the first three characters, so you can't see them. In this case, we're going to use our arrow keys, and we're just going to start kind of slowly tapping left or right, up and down, in order to reposition that second layer to make sure it's where we want it to be, and it's going to make it look 3D-ish in that case. Okay, so once I have that done, you'll notice that obviously my AFC is a lot smaller than the workspace is, so I want to resize all of these characters. So in this case here, I have my first three selected. I want to just quickly deselect them, so I'm going to select the top layer again, and now only that first A in red is highlighted. And I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to select the last C. I'm going to hold shift, and now all 6 of those layers are selected. And then I'm going to hit Command T, so it gives me a transform box, and I'm going to basically just click in the corner here and drag, and that's going to allow me to enlarge it. Okay. Now, when you're using earlier versions of Photoshop, which would be CS6 or below, you're going to want to hold shift to make sure that it scales in the right proportion. So it's going to lock the proportions of the characters. Otherwise, it's going to distort. And the newer ones, when I hold shift, it does the opposite, and it actually lets me distort the characters by holding shift and making the change. I don't want that. I just want to click in the corner here and drag in this case. And on the earlier versions, you're going to hold shift to basically drag and constrain the proportions. So I'm going to hit Command Z to go back and actually kind of go to the previous step so that I don't have the distorted characters. When you hit Command Z, basically that takes you back to the previous step that you were working on. So if you made a mistake, it just lets you go back one step. And if you continue to do it, it'll actually go back up to 25 different steps so that you kind of, correct multiple mistakes if you need to. So now that I'm on my previous step, I'm going to click and drag on the corner here, and I'm going to resize it to better suit the size of our box here, okay? Now I want this on an angle, so while it's selected, I'm going to basically scroll to the bottom corner here. You can either go to the top corner, the bottom right, the bottom left, top right, top left, whichever one you want to use. And then you're just going to make sure that it actually changes that little marker from the pointer to that sort of semicircle shape, and then you're just basically going to click and hold, and then you're going to drag it and basically put it in the position you want, and then you're going to let go. Now, obviously, it's going outside the workspace, which means it'll get cut off. So you want to click inside the center. Again, you want to make sure all the layers are highlighted. You're going to click in the center and hold it, and then just drag it back into position. That'll move all the layers back to where you want them to be. In this case, I want them about there. Once I got it where I want it to be, I can hit return or enter, or I can just hit the move tool icon up top here, and that will deselect the selection, and then now I'm no longer working on those unless I basically want to. You want to make sure that you click here to release all those characters, and then you're not accidentally going to move anything. Right now the A is still selected, so if I move the A by mistake, I've got to reposition it. So in this case here, I made that mistake. I'm going to hit Command Z or Command Z to bring that back into place, and then I'm okay there. Now from this point here, I want to make sure that I'm not getting all these extra layers in my way as I'm working. So what I want to do is I want to group all these layers into one folder. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically select the A on top. I'm going to scroll to the last one that I want to actually group together. And I'm basically going to hold Shift and then hit the C there. That's selecting all those layers again. And now I'm going to hit Command G, and that's going to group them all together. So G for group, okay? It creates our folder, and it's actually just going to name it by default Group 1. If you double click on the folder, it'll actually allow you to change the name of the folder, and you can just put what it is you want it to be called, okay? So in this case, I just want it being called AFC. I'm just going to type AFC and then hit enter or return to confirm the name of that folder. Okay, so now we have our AFC letters all selected together. Now, I want to reposition this again. So what I want to do is normally when you actually click on that folder, it should allow me to move all of them in one shot. For some reason, it's only allowing me to move each individual character. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that I go into that folder and I select all of the characters again. And I'm just going to move them kind of out of the way for a moment there up top and then leave them right where they are, because now we want to create that rectangular box for the lower part of the logo. Okay, so in this case, what I want to do is I want to basically start by working on the text for the next layer, and that's going to be the name of the logo here, which is going to be action figure capture. So I'm just going to select my text tool again, and I'm going to work into an open space of the workspace here, and I'm going to click in there in a moment. You'll notice if I go up a little higher, it actually brings the marker to select the layers above here. I don't want to do that, so you don't want to accidentally select that layer and start working on that guy instead. Okay, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're clicking away from the area there. So basically, you want to make sure when you select your layer here, we're not going to accidentally start working in that same area. So we're going to hit the text tool again. We're going to make sure that that little box is present. Then we're going to click there, and it's going to basically put our next layer in place for our text. And then we're going to start typing what we want to call it. So in this case, we want to call it action figure captures. Okay, now one mistake I did make is you'll notice is obviously the text is way too large, so I want to basically just hit Command Z and start basically taking away these characters because I didn't mean to actually type that actually. So we're going to basically end up clicking and highlighting here and just deleting this for now. And we're going to make sure that we pick the right text size first because we didn't want our text to be that big for this little box. So I'm going to select, I believe it's 24 points for the next one here that I want. And I also want it in black. So I'm going to make sure that I go up top and I'm going to click the right color that we want. So we want this next layer in black. And then we're just going to basically start typing again. So we're going to put action figure captures. Once we have that done, what we want to do is we want to make sure that, again, it's above our AFC logo. So we have our layer we want to be. We want to create a new layer. Actually, what we want to do is we want to create that rectangle next. So we're going to click the rectangular tool, and we're basically going to click on our workspace. Now, it's going to put the layer above, okay, but don't worry about that right now. We're just going to click above it, and we're going to drag our rectangular shape out, and then we're going to basically just let go. Now, I've already got the colors I wanted selected. If I want different colors, once I've done that, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up top here and I'm going to select the fill tool, and I'm basically going to choose whatever color I want that box to be. In this case, I want it yellow anyway, so I have it set to where I want it. And then I want that outline around the box there as well, and that's going to be your stroke. So you have your fill for your inside color, your stroke is your outside color for your trim. If I select no stroke, basically with that line there, it takes away the black outline from around the box. In this case, I want it, so I'm going to select black. And then I'm going to basically click away from the window to remove that menu. And you'll notice our rectangle is above our text. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we move that layer just below so that the text is sitting on top. And then we're going to reposition this box by basically clicking the move tool. And we're going to drag the box in behind. Now you'll notice the box is not, or it's just long enough here. If I need to resize this box, what I can do is I can hit Command T in that case, and then I can just basically drag it again by holding Shift and dragging outwards to constrain the proportions on the older versions, or I would just click and drag on the newer versions like I mentioned. Now you'll notice they're not aligned here, okay? The action figure text is off to the side a bit. To align them, I'm going to make sure my rectangle is selected. I'm going to select our text layer, and then I'm going to go up to our alignment tools, which are across the top of the screen here, and I'm going to hit Center Justify. So I'm going to click once, and then it's going to center our logo through the horizontal center. If I need it vertically centered, I'm going to make sure both layers are still selected, and I'm going to make sure that I click the vertical justification so that it makes sure that it's actually justified vertically as well. Okay, so now we've got what we want. We still have our layer selected. We're going to want to make sure that we transform this box to make sure it kind of scales correctly with what's above. So we're going to hit Command T again. And we also want to rotate it to make sure it angles underneath. So we're going to rotate it first by clicking and holding and making sure we have that little semicircle aligned. We're going to kind of roughly guesstimate where it's going to be there. And then we're going to click into the box here. You'll notice that now it's got a pointer arrow. That pointer arrow is going to allow us to click and move it into place. And then I want it just below there. It's roughly aligned, so don't worry. And then we're just basically now click in the corner here, the top left, top right, wherever you want to click, and then basically you're going to click and hold and drag it, and then that's going to enlarge it again. Clicking and holding on the newer versions basically will allow you to constrain your proportions. You want to hold Shift and then start clicking and dragging in order to make sure that the proportions stay scaled properly. Otherwise, it's going to distort, and you're going to get a weird shape, and that's not what you want in this case. So now I'm just going to hit Command Z to go backward, make sure we got what we want here. And I'm going to reposition this whole thing by clicking in the area around the box, or in the middle of the box here, to make sure that we're positioning everything all together in one shot. So now if you notice, we're sitting above our AFC logo. In this case, what we want to do is we just want to take those two layers, click and drag, and make sure that they're sitting below. Now you'll notice here, when I'm dragging it highlights, and I put that little blue trim around that area, if I put the blue trim where the AFC is, it's actually going to drag it into that folder that we've created for that logo. We don't want that, so we want to keep scrolling down until we see a single thin blue line, and that means we're actually in the layer below, and then we're going to let go, and it's going to release it underneath it. Now we're still kind of being blocked here, so now what we got to do is we got to continue to try to realign it and transform it to make sure it's actually done aligned properly. And you'll notice that I'm going out of the workspace. So what I have to be careful is I have to make sure I'm not like actually saving outside of the workspace, because if I try to print that thing or save it afterwards, and I'm saving it as a JPEG or any other finalized formats, it'll cut off whatever's not in our workspace. We want to make sure that we actually position everything properly. So once I've got this aligned properly, I'm going to reposition everything as well. So I want it to be about there. I'm going to hit enter or return just to make sure that it deselects everything and it actually leaves it in place. I want to make sure I click away from here, because what I want to do now is I want to move that AFC. Okay, so I'm going to click on the folder, I'm going to open it up, make sure that we click and highlight all our characters here, and then we're going to start using the arrows or the mouse or trackpad to reposition it here. Now I'm going outside with the AFC one, so in this case what I want to do is I'm probably going to want to rescale all those characters. So I'm going to hit Command T, and then I'm going to rescale those characters to make sure that we're staying in the workspace. So I don't need it to be that big, I'm just basically making sure that I'm staying within the workspace. Once I've got that done, I'm going to reposition it above our characters here, and we're going to hit enter. And then now we've got it right where we want it to be. We're going to click on that arrow to make sure that we close up that folder, and then we're going to select these characters here, and we're going to basically make sure that we highlight these guys, and we're going to reposition them. And I did forget one step, which I'm going to work on in just a second here, guys, which is to create that black box underneath for the 3D effect. Okay, so in this case what I'm going to do now is, now that I've got it positioned roughly, I'm going to select the folder above and make sure all my characters are highlighted, as well as everything beneath it. And I'm basically just going to highlight them all, and I'm going to reposition this so that I can continue to work on the space just below, which is where I want to have that next box. Then I'm going to hit return and click away from this guy. Then we're going to minimize that folder again. Now here what I want to do is I want to take that rectangular box that we've created, I'm going to drag it and drop it just underneath. And I'm going to basically select a new fill color because I don't want the fill color to be black any longer. I mean, to be yellow any longer. I want it to be black. And I don't need a stroke on that box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically go and click on the stroke first off, and we're going to deselect it. So on the side menu here, you have your appearance. You want to go to that option. You want to select the stroke, and you want to hit no stroke, which is that line there, and that removes the stroke on that second box. And then I want to click on fill, and I want to basically pick black for the fill. So now we have that fill again in black. It put the new layer on top. I want it actually just below, so we're going to basically highlight it, and we're going to drag it just below our previous work, and then we're going to use the arrow keys again to kind of reposition where that box is underneath it so that we get that 3D effect. Okay, now we have everything set to go. We're going to basically group these guys into its own folder. So we're going to select the action figure captures text. We're going to select the bottom row for that second rectangle. Okay, and then we're going to hit Command G, and it's going to basically group all those three together. And then we're going to double click and we're going to rename our folder. In this case, we're going to call it AFC text. And then we have our second folder. Okay, now that I have that created, I want to group these two together. Okay, so that I have all the folders moving together. So I'm going to basically hold shift, I'm going to click the one above, and I'm going to hit Command G again to create our next folder. And then we're going to rename this one AFC logo so that we have all of those in the same folder. Now, if I want to work on each individual part, I would just click on the arrow here, click into the folder I want to work on, and then select the layer that I want to actually work on. And I can, in this case, I'm just clicking on the eyeball as an example so I can hide it and bring it back just so you can see that something's happening. Okay, so now we have the logo all created and we have it all selected here. Now, normally what happens is when you click on a grouped folder, it's meant to move everything all together. Now, today it hasn't been working for whatever reason, and so I'm not sure it's going to work in this case, so bear with me, okay? Once I do that, what I want to do is I want to basically click on the area here, and if I click on the F, it might move just the F. It's meant to move everything all together because all those folders should be selected inside, and you can see already they're not. So normally when I click on that, these guys should all be selected as well, and then everything inside should be selected, but for some reason that's not happening at the moment. But let's see what happens when we click on it just in case. So now we're going to try and move everything in one shot. Yeah, see, now it's moving just the F. We want to make sure that everything is selected. So we're basically just, maybe we can do here is we can hit Command A, and that's going to basically select all, or Control A to select all. And that's going to select everything that's in those groups. And then now, nope, it's actually not working because it's actually telling me I have to merge all the groups. Okay, and I don't want to merge the groups because then it's basically going to basically create one solid object, which is not what we want yet, because in case we want to edit this later, we want to make sure that we're not making changes, okay? So that's not working. So let me see how we're going to do this here. So to deselect with those marching ants, you're just going to click on this little kind of rectangular dashed object, and you're just going to click away, so that'll deselect everything. So what I got to do now is I'm going to try and see if I move these together by highlighting those folders using our move tool. Okay, now it's selecting all of them like I wanted it to, and we're able to move all the folders and the characters and lines and logos all in one time. We're going to hit Command T, and then we're going to rescale this guy. And what I want to do now is I want to create the glow that was behind uh, those characters. Okay, so now that we have them all selected, we're going to basically make a copy of it. So we're going to hit Command C to make a copy. Okay, or what you can do is you can basically just drag and hit your new layer icon, and that's going to create duplicates of those two folders. And we're now going to merge these guys into one folder. Okay, so we're going to basically flatten these two folders into one area. So we're going to go up to the top here, we're going to go layer, and we're going to go to merge layers, and it's going to merge all of those into one solid object, okay? Because this is what we're going to do when we finalize the logo anyway. And then we're going to leave these two folders here as they are in case we want to make changes. Because I want to make a glow out of this one, I'm going to basically merge them all into one solid object. And then now we have a copy of those characters. And now here's where this gets interesting, because now you get to add your glow finally. And basically, once we have that layer selected, We're going to go into our effects tools here, which is the little FX icon. And here is where your styles come in. And I basically have bought a number of different styles from the Envato website. And I basically have a lot of different styles available to me, so I can click them. There are some default styles like, fur and so forth, and it'll just change kind of to whatever it is you click on. But you'll notice because it's all merged into one object, it's basically applying that to the entire object. Now, some of the ones that I bought are fairly interesting, and you can kind of put like a flaming glow around things, and you can do all kinds of different effects that way based on the ones that you tend to have on your computer. And you'll notice that that layer style is in my folder called 100 layer style bundle, which I bought from Envato. And there's 100 different types of effects that I can add to there from this particular folder. Okay. The one I'm looking for isn't in this particular folder. It's actually in my little glamour styles folder here. And this is another set that I bought. And when I click on these guys, you'll notice I can add like a little bling to each one depending on which one I want to use. I want in this case the one here with the blue glowing outline. So I'm going to click on it and it's automatically going to give me that blue glowing outline. Now you'll notice it's all hollowed out because it's only highlighting the outline with that neon look for the outline of the object. So I would actually want to put my text back in here. So that's why we created that second layer and we solidified it. Because now that we have our glowing layer from that effect style, we're just going to kind of move the effects window back into position by hitting the double arrows here. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to go back in and we're going to select the folders that we just removed the eyeball from, and that's going to drop them back in place into position. Okay. And then from there, we're going to minimize this little effects window. You'll notice here, it's showing us all the different effects that that actual glow added. So if I deselect the eyeball for effects, it removes it. And then when I click on it, it puts it all back. So now that changed the stroke, it changed the inner glow, the outer glow, the drop shadow. So it's added all these effects to this particular one. And I can turn each one off if I don't want it on there. And then that just changes how the logo looks based on which ones I actually have highlighted. Okay, now if you want to create something individually and you want to add all these different effects to a layer individually, where they're found is if you go into filter, okay, oh sorry, layer style, and you go into layer style here, you have all those options here. When you click on each one, it's going to bring up the menu and it's going to allow you to basically work on the opacity, so how light or dark it is and showing up in the object, the size and everything else as well is all controlled through that window. In this case here, I'm using a pre-purchased one that actually has already got everything set up for me, but I can go in and tweak it if I want to. In this case, I don't want to. Now you'll notice here I have that one sitting on top, and I really don't want it sitting on top of those letters. So what I want to do is I want to basically just kind of minimize my little effects window. I want to click on that layer and I want to drag it below our two previous ones. So now it's kind of sitting just behind everything and it's actually giving the glow instead of sitting on top of it. Okay, so once that's actually done, we're going to basically take that layer that we just created, we're going to click and drag it into our logo folder. And then now we can actually take that whole logo folder and we can move it into our next object. And again, it's not clicking and selecting everything the way it's supposed to. So we're going to have to figure out what's happening there and make sure that we have everything selected. So we're going to basically hold shift, select all the files here. And now we want to click and drag this into our photo that we were working on. So now that we have everything selected and it's highlighted, I should technically be able to click onto the middle of the logo here and then click and drag. So I'm going to click and hold it and I'm going to drag everything, and we're going to try and highlight our next, where our previous file was at the top here. And we're going to basically click and continue to hold the drag feature. Once we get it into the window, we can then just release it, and it's going to basically place it on top. Now it's warning me that the document is a different depth. We're just going to say yes, okay? And then now it's going to appear on top. You'll notice again it's a little too big. So now we're going to hit Command T, and that's going to allow us to rescale our object, okay? So we're just going to just click into the corner here, and we're going to rescale everything. Okay, and it didn't rescale. It's not selecting everything the way it's supposed to again. So we're going to hit Command Z to go backwards. We're going to make sure all our layers are selected. And then we're going to hit Command T. So now it's selecting everything again the way it's supposed to. And we're just going to either hold Shift and then basically click on the upper corner here to rescale, or just, if you're using the newer version, you're just going to click on the corner here and we're going to redrag. We're just going to click and drag and make that the size we want it to be. So now we have our glowing logo. We're just going to click and hold and position it to where we would like it to be. In this case, we want it kind of across from the text here. And then now we have our logo created. And now we have our logo in our shot. Okay, so now our logo is finished. So now we're going to make sure that, okay, so in this case, because I have to drag them over again, it actually didn't carry the original folder I made over. So to create that new folder again, we're just basically going to click on the AFC copy here. We're going to click on this guy, and we're going to click on the next one, and we're just going to hit Command G and create a group. And we're just going to call that AFC logo. Now, it shouldn't be doing some of these things, guys, so hopefully it won't do them to you. If it does, you kind of do the things I'm doing to make sure that it allows you to do the work that we want to do, okay? So right here, we've got our text done, we've got a position, we've got our logo done, it's positioned. So we're good to move into kind of creating the glows and effects on our weapon here. We're going to put a little kind of flare in behind the two characters here. And we're going to create glowing eyes for the Cobra in this next step, okay? So bear with me and we'll get this going next. Okay, so next we're going to create the flare that was standing in behind the characters there, so we kind of have a bit of a highlight, almost like a little explosion sort of flare looking feel to the background and behind the figures. So what we want to do to create that is we're going to basically go down to new layer, okay? And we're going to basically click on the new layer icon. That's going to give us a new blank layer. Now we don't want it on top obviously because we want it to be behind the characters. So now right here we have our background fill color, and then we have our actual figures that we masked out earlier in the previous tutorial. We want to make sure that layer is in between those two layers. So we're going to click on it and we're going to drag it just in between the two again. If you're highlighting that has a whole box selected, it's going to drag it into the layer that's actually highlighted. So you want to keep going down and making sure that it's selected. It's got that thin little blue line, so it drops it in between the two layers. Okay? From here, we're basically just going to rename the layer. So we're going to double click on it. We're just going to call this flare in this case. Okay, and I'm just going to hit enter. And now we have our flare layer selected. So here's where we actually create the flare using a paintbrush. Now again, I've bought these brushes, so I have these different like effect brushes actually available to me. You can either go look online and try and download them from the different sites by either getting free ones or purchasing them from Envato or other websites that sell brushes. In this case now we're just going to click on brush. Now you'll notice I have this kind of flare looking flash already selected, and I can use that one if I like. It's not the one I had in the previous example, but I can use it. So we're just going to basically use our bracket keys on our keyboard. Left is going to reduce the size, right is going to enlarge it. And then once you kind of select the area you want it to be, you're just going to hit the paintbrush. Now you'll notice here, these are our background foreground colors. You can use whatever color you want in this case if you want to create a glow. If you want it to be a particular color, you're going to want to make sure you have the color you want selected, okay? Because I'm going to be converting this to a layer style and making it look like it's a kind of a glowing flare, it doesn't matter what color I choose in this case, but if I was just going to leave a solid color in behind it, I would pick the color that I want, I'd position this where I want it to be, and then I would just basically click to add that in behind there, and I have the color that I've actually selected, okay? To change this to a glow, I'm going to use my FX key again, or shortcut again. I'm going to click on it, and then all those different layer styles that I have previously and I've purchased, I have them available to me. You're going to have to find these by either going online and looking on these websites to find them and to pick up the ones you want to get. The one I normally use, I have in my little 100 layer style bundle here. I'm going to click on it, and then I have all these different styles available to me, and this is going to kind of change it to look like what you're seeing in this little preview here. The one I normally use for this particular look is either this one here, because it gives me this sort of interesting little flare look. Oh, that's actually not the one, sorry, it's actually the other one. It is that guy there, I believe. Forgive me, Photoshop's being excessively slow right now. And as you click on each one, you'll notice it starts changing how they appear and how they look. So you're just going to basically pick the one you want to use. In this case, I was planning to use this one to begin with, and it's going to basically give us the glow that I'm kind of looking for right now. All these different styles just do different things. If you click on text that you've actually made, they'll actually put these different effects onto the text and everything as well. Your backgrounds, etc. And depending on the brush you pick, each one has a different effect and a different look to them. The one I'm using right now is going to be kind of generating from the center instead of generating all over the workspace. And I just wanted to kind of work strictly on the brush, so I'm going to play this particular one for this reason. So now we have our background flare. Okay, and you can rescale this by hitting Command T, and you can actually just rescale it to whatever you'd like it to be. Now you'll notice because the brush it's actually a brush, it does have a straight edge. If you want to make sure you avoid the straight edges, you can basically use your layer mask again. So you can click on layer mask, and that's going to add a little mask around us, and then we're going to pick the paintbrush and pick kind of a soft edge here to make sure that we just kind of paint away the areas we want to get rid of. So we're going to go into our brushes, and we're going to pick the right brush for the job. So that's our brush folder. And we're going to pick the brush that we want to use, and then we're going to have to resize the brush. Actually, you can see it's actually 30 points. When you hold your left and right bracket keys, it's going to adjust the size of it, and I can paint away or kind of mask away. Oops, sorry, I've got my foreground color in the wrong color, because again, white actually puts things back, and then basically black actually conceals them. So the white reveals, the black conceals. I want to make sure I have black, and then I'm going to kind of paint away. It's flipping it back to white for whatever reason. Okay, with black selected, we're going to paint away the areas to give us a rounded shape again. Now this isn't going the way I want it to, so in this case I don't really want to be doing this. I'm just going to rescale this to where I had it. But you can take your time, and you can actually adjust this. And when you paint things away, depending on the effect that's actually on there, it's going to basically automatically readjust the effect to match what you're doing when you're painting them away and everything. So if I want to create like almost like a flame effect, I can paint away portions of that brush style here, and it's just going to keep leaving things wherever I want. So you can even get some interesting looks that way as well. But in this case, I want the whole flare to be showing through. So I'm going to hit basically Command Z, or I can go to Edit, and I can just do Undo Brush Tool or step backwards. Command Z is your shortcut, or Command Z, and you're just going to hit that until it goes back to where it was previously. So in this case, I did quite a few little steps there by continuing to paint. So I'm just going to continue to hit that Command Z key by holding Command, then hitting Z or Z until it actually steps back to where I had that flare positioned in the center. In this case, it looks like I've done at least 10 or more steps here, so we're just going to keep doing that, and eventually it's going to bring it back to where we had it in the first place. And there we are. So now we have it back to where I had it. Now it's going back into the previous style because I hit the shortcut one too many times. So now it's cycling through all those different effects here. So once it's done thinking, I'll select what I wanted originally. Okay, so it's back to where I wanted it to be originally, and it's still thinking. Forgive me, guys, the pains of doing live video recordings. Okay, so once it stops thinking, we're going to, wow, I stepped all the way back and even deleted my layer there. Wow. Okay, so my Photoshop had a lot of lag and undid a lot of things I was working on. Okay. So now we want to step forward in this case. So at least by making this mistake now, you know that I can show you how to step forward. So in this case, we can go edit and then redo layer, or we can actually look and see what the shortcut key suggestion is. In this case, it's Shift, Command, and then Z again, or Z. And then we're going to hold Shift, Command, and then hit Z. And we're now going to step forward until it puts things back to where they were. And this time I'm going to go a lot slower so that I don't accidentally step too far forward this time. Sorry for the mistakes, guys. It's a good way to learn, though. So there we go. So we got our flare back. Now it's thinking, and it's going to start adding those flares that I was playing with the different layer style effects. And we're just going to click back through until we get back to the one that I wanted. Now in this case, I can let it do this and let it try and figure it out, or I can just basically go back into my effects key and properly select the one that I was looking to use in the first place. And hopefully Photoshop will do what I'm asking it to. There we go. Okay, so now we got this in position. You'll notice here that we're getting that edge from where the brush cuts off. To resize this to make sure it's actually not showing up in the image, you can just basically hit Command T and you can drag and reposition the edges. Now, if you go outside of the box here, it's not a big deal because it's just going to basically just bring the edge of the effect outside and cut off what we don't, uh, cut off any areas that are outside of the box. It's just going to say what you see inside the box in this case. Once that's done, I'm going to hit enter or return, and then now we have our background flare done. And again, this is different than the example that I did originally. The example I did originally had a different brush. And if you want to use, whatever brush, you just go into your brushes, scroll through to the brush you want to use, and then select it, and then just basically paint that design into the actual area and add your effect. Okay, so now we've got the glare or the flare done, and we're on to moving on to the gun. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to create a new layer, but we want the gun flare to be sitting above the figure's gun. So we're going to create a layer above the masked out figures. Okay, so now we're going to select the masked out figure layer, and we're going to hit the new layer icon, and it's going to put the layer above the figures in this case. Okay, now again, that flare brush I was using actually will work for this gun flare. Okay, the flare is going to be a little harder to see now because I'm actually using a much different background design. So when I go to paint this flare brush, it may not be as obvious when I actually go to put it in top here. So I'm going to select the flare that we had a second ago. And I'm just going to use my keys here on my keyboard, the bracket key to the right to enlarge it. And I can reduce it if I want it to be smaller. It shows you a preview of where it's going to be. And then once you got it where you want it to be, you're just going to basically tap once. It's going to put it where you selected. And then now we're going to select that FX style again. And I'm going to pick the one that I was using. And then now you'll notice that it's added our glare. Now you'll notice, our flare, sorry. Now if you notice it actually kind of blends a little too much here. I can either change this background flare design or I can lower its opacity so it's not as bright. And then that will actually allow me to also kind of have that lens barrel glare, looking brighter as well. So now you'll notice it basically lowered the flare in the background there. If I don't like the way that's looking, I can basically choose a different brush for the background, or I can basically choose to just have it the way it is, if anything. In this case, because we're just basically testing it out, I'm just going to let things be what they are. And actually, you know what? I lied. I'm going to delete this layer, and I'm going to recreate a new layer here. So I'm going to hit the select the move tool here. I'm going to hit delete to delete that layer. And I'm just going to, now that we actually have the background highlighted again, I'm just going to create that new layer again. And I'm going to look for the brush that I had originally. And we're going to use it instead of that large flare because that doesn't look good. It looks fine for the gun, which is good. But we're going to pick one that actually resembles the one that I used originally. So bear with me while I scroll through the different brushes that I have available to me. All these brushes do different things. By the way, these are like bubbles. So if I'm actually doing like an underwater scene, I can actually select one of these little bubble windows, bubble brushes, and I can paint bubbles into the shot. There's different ones that'll actually look like it's raining. All kinds of different brushes you can find online, and you can save and download and then install them into Photoshop. Now to install them into Photoshop, by the way, what you do is you basically would select your brushes here, and you basically would go to Add Brush, and then you'd actually navigate to the folder it's in, and then just double click on the actual brush icon that you've downloaded, and it will actually automatically install it into your brushes folder. So the original flare I used should be coming up soon. Okay, it is this one here, I believe, that I used the first time. Yeah, so there, now that we got the brush selected, we're just going to kind of hit the double arrows here to move that menu out of our way. And now we've got our brush, and you can see where it's going to position it. You can use your arrow keys to enlarge and reduce. I'm going to basically enlarge it here. I'm going to pick my position, and I'm going to paint it in. Now, again, it shows up, depending on whatever your foreground color is. This is in case you don't want to add the glow. That actually creates that sort of look. I want it to glow. So basically now that I've got that set into position, I'm going to go back to my FX tool and I'm going to select the different layer style that I actually wanted it to be. And it's going to add that. And there we go. So now that looks a lot better. Now you'll notice the brush thing is kind of getting annoying, getting in the way now. I can basically go up to the arrow here and select a different brush to basically go back to, so that we're not seeing that thing in our way as we're trying to move around and try and paint. So we're just going to select a different brush size, and now we're back to the normal menu size here. I'm going to just select my move tool so I get my regular pointer back. Okay, so now we've got our background flare finished, so that's out of the way, and we can rename that layer flare. And we're done. So now we've got basically that layer done. I did create the gun barrel glow and I forgot to name it here. So in this case here, you'll notice if I actually click the eyeball key, it's going to remove our view of that gun barrel glare. Okay, but that's the layer and it's in the right position now. So we can rename this just gun barrel glare or gun glare, whatever you'd like to name it. Okay, and we're all set there. So now we want to work on the snake's eyes. And this is actually our final step. Thank you for sticking it out. So now we're going to create a layer just above our gun barrel, okay, our gun glow, and we're going to rename this Snake Eyes, ironically for the G.I. Joe character in this case. So we're just going to type Snake Eyes. And what we're going to do is we're going to select our paintbrush now. In this case here, we're going to want to make sure that we're using it. And again, color doesn't matter unless you want to leave that color in place. In this case, it doesn't matter because I'm going to be adding the glow to it. And so we're going to basically take the brush and we're just going to basically zoom in by using the gesture on your trackpad, or you're holding your mouse key and then scrolling with your mouse wheel to enlarge and zoom in. And we're going to zoom in and we're just going to use our gestures with the two fingers to drag it into place. And now we're going to use, with our brush tool selected, we're going to use our bracket keys again here to resize our brush. And what we want to do is we want to paint in the area, we want to make sure it's just large enough to paint in the area where the actual eyes are. And so what we're going to do is we're basically going to resize it, get our brush into position, and then we're just going to paint into the area where the eyes are. Now you don't have to be exact in this case if we're adding the glow, okay? But if you want to just change the color of the eyes here, you're going to want to make sure that you're trying to get it as exact as possible. And now this one here, if I actually leave it at this size here because it is larger, it's going to basically paint all over the area that I don't want to paint into. So I'm going to resize the brush again, and I'm going to paint that narrower side here. Okay, and then once we get the eyes painted, they don't look so great right now because of the color that I've chosen, but we're going to go back into our effect style, and we're going to choose that same glowing eye option again. Now you'll notice that we got our glow. Okay, and now you'll notice it's red, but I want it to be green. So here, once we have the effect in place and we have what we wanted, we're going to double click on this effects icon next to our layer Snake Eyes. And when we double click, it's going to bring up the menu to make sure we can change those, the different colors that they've chosen in this particular case. So now you'll notice we have all our different effect options here. When you click through them, you'll see that they're going to have different colors associated with them. In this case here, the ones I want to change are the inner shadow, the inner glow, the gradient, and the outer glow. The drop shadow can remain black in this case. Okay, sometimes that'll be a different color, and you can change that to the color you'd like it to be. But in this case, I'm just going to leave it black. Right now, I'm going to focus on the outer glow, okay? And that's going to change the actual glow from outside the eyes here. And I'm basically going to go to where the color is actually represented, and I'm going to double click on it, and it's going to bring up our color menu, okay? And I'm going to select green from inside this menu. And you can basically click inside the color to select the color you want it to be. In this case, I want that outer glow to be pretty bright, so I'm just going to select the brighter part of the color options here, and I'm going to hit OK. And then we've got our green glow going here, so you'll notice here the green glow is already taking effect. And then we're going to select each part of this different area. Now this is a gradient layer, okay? So this one actually has two different colors involved, and it's actually meant to be layering them side by side so that you get kind of a little layered sort of like look to the glow. So we're going to double click on that again. Now here we have a scale, okay, to change where the position of those colors come into effect. But right now we want to actually change the color of them. So I'm going to double click on the little square here. It's going to bring up our color box again, and we're going to select the new color we want it to be and select OK. And then we're going to click on the one on the far right. And we're going to do the same, double click. and we're going to choose the color we want this one to be, and then we're going to hit OK. And then now you'll see the preview still says it's orange, but we've actually selected green. So when we hit OK now, it's going to apply the green. And we're starting to get that green look that we actually want it to be. You can notice it's still a bit orange here, and that's because that orange is actually on one of these two layers here. So we're going to click on Inner Glow, going to double click, and we're going to change that to a green again. And then we're going to click Inner Shadow, and we're going to click on it, or double click on it, sorry. And then we're going to select our new color again, and we're going to click OK. Now, once all those ones have been changed, we're just going to click OK for the final time, and now we've got our green glowing eyes. Now, if you want these to be brighter, you can basically just take that same layer, and you can click on it, and you can drag it again, and you can basically just make it even brighter by creating a second layer on top, and that will actually, duplicate the layer and make it even brighter, okay? In this case, it looked fine before, so I'm just going to delete that second layer. And it'll say, am I sure I want to delete it? I'm just going to say yes, because I think the one is bright enough already. And that's basically it. We are done. And now we can just zoom back out, and you can see our finalized product. Okay? And again, you can make changes and tweak this guy. If you think that these little green, it's a little too bright here, you can change the opacity on your layer by actually selecting the layer that you want by clicking on it. And then you can actually go to opacity, and you can click and drag and adjust how bright that is if you don't want it to look so bright, okay? And you can change that as you like and scale it to your liking. You can even change the blending modes as well if you want to by actually clicking here, and then this will actually just change to different types of looks for the layer. When you're using these pre-designed layers, normally they've already selected it and you don't want to mess with it because you'll actually kind of mess with that actual look, okay? But that's it. We are basically done. And if you want to just change anything, if you want to change where things are positioned and everything, like let's say I want the text to be behind my figures for whatever reason, I can just click and drag and make sure that I drag the actual box below the layer that I'm trying to move it underneath, and it will actually move these things. So right now it's thinking, and then you'll notice my text ends up behind my figures. Obviously I don't want that, so I'm going to hit Command Z or Command Z, and it's going to put our box back to where I wanted it to be. All of these things can be turned on and off. You can actually basically reposition them just by moving your layers. Okay, but if you want to just say I don't want this particular text in the image anymore, but I don't want to delete it just in case I want to change the text later, I can just hit the eyeball icon and hide that. And then when I go to save my file, it's basically going to have that out of the way and just have the AFC logo and everything else that we have worked on. Once you have it looking the way you want to, you're just basically going to go up to File here. You want to save this as a PSD initially to make sure that you have the actual Photoshop document file saved in case you want to go back and make changes later. So you're going to make sure Photoshop is selected for your format, and then you're going to name your file the way you'd like to name it. Make sure it says PSD, and then you're just basically going to save it into whatever folder you want to save it into for your destination, and then you're just going to click Save at the bottom of the menu there, and that will allow you to save your file as a PSD. Okay, so in this case it's going to be called Cobra Commander Battlesnake PSD. I'm going to select Save. It's going to ask me to replace the one that I already had in there. I'm going to say yes, replace, and then it's going to bring up a window saying to maximize compatibility. Just make sure that's checked, and then just basically say OK, and now it's going to work on saving the document there. Okay. Now to see our final image and to be able to upload this and to actually be able to put it onto a website or onto Facebook or whatever you'd like to put it into, any social media, etc. If you want to even print it, you can basically now just save this as a JPEG in its final format, and it's going to combine all the layers and make a flat image so that you can actually save the file as a picture and allow you to use it the way you'd like. So you're going to go again up to Save. So you're going to go File, Save As. We're going to change the actual format now from Photoshop to JPEG. So you're just going to click on that bar, go down to JPEG, select JPEG, name it what you'd like it to be, and then you're going to select your destination. So in this case, I'm just going to throw up my desktop just so I can quickly find it. So I'm going to select Desktop, and we're going to have Cobra Commander Battlesnake here. Now I have some files up here that actually are already named. So just to be sure that I don't accidentally have one that's already there with the same file name, I'm just going to basically click into the window here, get my my marker up top there, and I'm just going to rename it something unique by just putting like 12, just to change the file name to make sure I don't accidentally save on top of one I already have saved. And now I'm just going to go down to the bottom right hand corner and I'm going to select save as, or save, sorry. And I'm just going to wait for this menu to pop up here saying we want maximum quality. I'm going to select OK, and it's now going to save our picture onto our location. So now we've saved our photo. We can minimize Photoshop quickly and we can look for our photo and the destination we saved it in. You double click on that guy and bring it up, and there's our final image. And that's basically all there is to it. So now you have your glares, your flares, your logos, your text, everything is done. You've done your masking in the previous video. Now, if you haven't done the masking video, I'll link that one below, and you can actually go back and look at how we actually remove the figures from the backgrounds after we shot them and we're able to actually drop them into this new background and to add all these different effects to them after the fact. Okay, so that's it for this video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it was helpful. I'm sorry for the little mistakes and glitches, throughout. It's unfortunate, but at times these programs don't do exactly what you're trying to do at times, and it's either user error or possibly the program acting up. In this case, it's probably user error. Okay, but we got it done, and we got what we were looking for. So in the end, we're all good. If you enjoy the video and you enjoy the tutorials, I'm sorry, they will get better over time, guys. I'm still new to this. I'm just used to doing mainly photo editing, so video is new to me. And normally my programs don't act up like this the way they have today. And so we'll get better at this, guys, as time goes in. Thanks for bearing with me. Again, if you enjoyed everything and you've learned anything, please like, subscribe, and hit that notifications button to let you know when we got new videos up. I will continue to do new videos and reviews on different figures and how they'll actually, the pluses and the minuses of figures, posabilities and accessories and everything, how they'll affect your photography, and how they'll all fit into doing your compositions and everything. And I'm going to look at doing some interviews with people that are actually also doing the same sort of thing, customizers, collectors, etc., to talk to them about their experiences with all of this and how they've enjoyed doing it and what they like and dislike about doing it. So keep an eye out for more videos coming, guys. I'm hoping to make this channel grow and to get some things going here and to make sure that we can actually continue to kind of grow together and enjoy the hobby together. Thanks again, guys. Have a great day. Take care.